The fluorescent lights hummed above Raymond Carter's head, casting harsh shadows across the pale green walls of his death row cell. At 68 years old, every joint in his body ached from the cold concrete floor and the narrow metal bed that had been his only comfort for 15 long years. His once powerful frame, the body of a man who'd spent 3 decades chasing criminals through Houston's streets, had withered to something barely recognizable. 15 years, 5,479 days, 131,496 hours. Raymond had counted every single one. The gray-haired former police officer sat hunched over a small metal table, his weathered hands trembling as he gripped a pencil. The final requests form lay before him, mostly blank. Other inmates filled these forms with elaborate last meals, requests for specific religious figures, desperate pleas for family visits they'd rejected for years. Raymond had none of that. His daughter Sarah visited monthly, never missing a single appointment, her eyes always searching his face for something, guilt, perhaps, or maybe innocence. He didn't know which she wanted to find anymore. His ex-wife had died 3 years into his sentence, her heart giving out from the shame and stress, everyone said. His old colleagues from the Houston Police Department had abandoned him the moment the guilty verdict came down. Everyone except one. Raymond's hand steadied as he wrote 4 simple words, "Let me see Rex." Warden Thomas Mitchell made his rounds every evening at precisely 6 p.m. At 62, he'd spent 30 years managing the Huntsville unit, Texas's primary execution facility. He'd overseen 183 executions. He'd read thousands of final requests. He thought nothing could surprise him anymore. He was wrong. "Your police dog," Warden Mitchell stared at the form, then at the inmate through the cell bars. "Raymond, you have 10 days left. Most men want to see their children make peace with God, have their favorite meal. You want a dog." Raymond lifted his head, and the warden saw something he rarely encountered in death row inmates. Not resignation, not rage, but burning, desperate hope. "Rex isn't just a dog, Warden," Raymond's voice cracked. "He was my partner for 8 years. He saved my life 4 times that I can count, probably more that I don't know about. We made over 200 arrests together, and he was there that night. The night they say I murdered Carlos Mendez." The warden shifted uncomfortably. He made it a point never to discuss inmates' guilt or innocence. His job was to manage their final days, nothing more. But something in Raymond's tone made him pause. "The dog was there," Mitchell's brow furrowed. "I don't recall any mention of a K-9 unit in your trial records." "Exactly." Raymond stood slowly, gripping the bars. His knuckles had gone white. "Rex was with me during that raid. He was in the room when the shooting happened, but somehow, conveniently, he wasn't called as a witness. His testimony, his behavior was excluded from evidence. Detective Kowalski said Rex was unreliable that night, that he'd been acting strangely and couldn't be trusted." "Dogs can't testify in court, Raymond." "No, but they can tell the truth, Warden, better than most humans." Raymond's voice dropped to an urgent whisper. "I've maintained my innocence for 15 years. I've filed every appeal, fought every legal battle, and lost them all. But Rex knows what happened in that room. He was trained to respond to defensive versus offensive gunfire. He knows I was protecting myself, not executing anyone." Warden Mitchell had heard countless proclamations of innocence. They all sounded the same after a while, desperate, rehearsed, hollow. But this was different. Raymond wasn't proclaiming his innocence to the warden. He was proclaiming it to a dog that wasn't even there. "Even if I approve this, your dog must be ancient by now. Do you even know if he's still alive?" For the first time, emotion cracked Raymond's weathered face. "My daughter has him. Sarah sends me pictures every month. He's 13 now, gray around the muzzle, arthritis in his hips, but he's alive. And every picture she sends, he's sleeping with my old police jacket. After 15 years, he still remembers me." The warden looked down at the form again. In the section marked Reason for Request, Raymond had written, "Rex knows the truth. He was there that night. Please, I'm begging you, let me look into his eyes one more time before I die. Let me tell him I'm sorry for leaving him, for failing him." Something squeezed in Mitchell's chest, an unwelcome feeling he'd learned to suppress years ago. Empathy had no place in a prison, especially death row. But he couldn't ignore the raw pain in Raymond's voice, the desperate love for a partner who'd waited faithfully for 15 years. "I'll make some calls," Mitchell heard himself say. "No promises. Security will be tight. Your daughter will have to bring him, and there will be restrictions on contact." Raymond's eyes filled with tears, the first tears Mitchell had ever seen from the stoic former officer. Thank you, Warden. You don't know what this means." As Mitchell walked away, the form clutched in his hand. He couldn't shake an uncomfortable thought. What if Raymond was telling the truth? What if this old man, 10 days from lethal injection, really was innocent? And stranger still, what if a dog could somehow prove it? Behind him, Raymond Carter sank onto his bunk, pressing his face into his hands. In 10 days, they would strap him to a gurney and inject poison into his veins for a murder he didn't commit. But before that happened, he would see his best friend one last time. "Hold on, Rex," he whispered into the empty cell. "Just hold on a little longer, boy." In a house 4 hours away, a 13-year-old German shepherd lifted his head from an old police jacket, ears suddenly alert, as if he'd heard his partner's voice carried on the wind. The faithful dog had waited 15 years. He could wait 10 more days. Sarah Carter's phone rang at 11:47 p.m., shattering the silence of her small Houston apartment. She jolted awake, heart pounding. Late-night calls never brought good news, especially when your father sat on death row. "Ms. Carter, this is Warden Mitchell from Huntsville Unit." Sarah's breath caught. "Is my father?" "He's fine, well, physically fine." The warden paused. "I'm calling about his final request. It's unusual." 20 minutes later, Sarah sat at her kitchen table, phone still pressed to her ear, staring in disbelief at Rex. The 13-year-old German shepherd lay on his bed by the fireplace, sleeping peacefully with his gray muzzle resting on her father's old police jacket, the one he'd worn the night of his arrest. "He wants to see Rex," she whispered, more to herself than the warden. "After all these years, that's his final wish." "Your father seems to believe the dog can somehow prove his innocence. I don't know if that's denial, desperation, or—" The warden trailed off. "Or what? Or maybe something we all missed." After hanging up, Sarah couldn't move. She sat frozen in the dim light of her kitchen, memories flooding back like a dam had burst inside her mind. She'd been 20 when they arrested her father, a junior at University of Houston, studying criminal justice because she'd wanted to be just like him, Raymond Carter, the legendary K-9 officer, the man who taught her that justice and truth were the same thing. Then came that terrible night 15 years ago. The phone call from her mother, hysterical, barely coherent. The news report showing her father in handcuffs, his face blank with shock. The accusations, first-degree murder, execution-style killing, a good cop gone bad. Sarah had rushed to the police station demanding answers. They'd let her see Rex, who'd been impounded as evidence. The dog had been frantic, packing his kennel, barking frantically at anyone who approached. But when Sarah came near, Rex had done something strange. He'd performed a specific behavior her father had taught him for emergencies. The protective stance, the one that meant, "My handler is in danger, help him." Rex suddenly stirred from his sleep, lifting his head. Those intelligent brown eyes, clouded slightly with age but still sharp, fixed on Sarah. It was as if he knew she was thinking about him, about that night, about everything they'd lost. "What do you think, old boy?" Sarah's voice cracked. "Should we go see him?" Rex's ears perked forward. He struggled to his feet, arthritis making his movements stiff and slow. But he walked to Sarah and placed his gray muzzle on her knee, the same gesture of comfort he'd given her countless times over the past 15 years. Sarah had adopted Rex immediately after her father's conviction. The police department wanted to reassign him, but she'd fought tooth and nail to keep him. Rex was all she had left of her father's innocence, the living proof that Raymond Carter had been a good man. But was he? That was the question that haunted Sarah every single day for 15 years. The evidence against her father had been overwhelming. His service weapon had killed Carlos Mendez. Gunpowder residue on his hands. His partner, Detective John Kowalski, had testified that Raymond executed Mendez after the man had already surrendered, hands up. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours. Sarah wanted to believe her father. God, how desperately she wanted to believe him. But doubt was a poison that spread slowly, infecting every memory, every childhood moment of looking up to him as a hero. What if she was wrong? What if the father she loved was actually a murderer? She'd spent 15 years visiting him monthly, searching his face for the truth. He never wavered in his story. Mendez had shot first, wounded him in the shoulder. Raymond returned fire in self-defense. When Kowalski arrived seconds later, Mendez was already dead, Raymond bleeding on the floor. But Kowalski told a different story. He said he'd arrived to find Raymond standing over Mendez's body, gun still raised, execution style. The forensics supported both versions to a point, making it a question of who the jury believed more. They'd believed Kowalski. Sarah stood and walked to her father's old desk, the one she'd taken from his house after her mother died. She'd kept it as a shrine to the man she wanted to believe in. Inside the bottom drawer, hidden beneath old papers, was a folder she'd assembled over the years, her own investigation. She'd never told anyone about it, not even her father. Part of her was afraid of what she might find, evidence of his guilt that would shatter her completely. But another part couldn't let it go. The folder contained news clippings, trial transcripts, witness statements. And one thing that had always bothered her. On page 47 of the incident report, buried in bureaucratic language, was a single line. K-9 unit present at scene, but excluded from evidence collection per Detective Kowalski's orders. Why? Police dogs were trained extensively. Their behavior was documented, studied, reliable. Rex had been trained to respond differently to defensive versus offensive shootings from his handler. During defensive fire, he would bark protectively, positioning himself between his handler and the threat. During offensive fire, controlled, deliberate shooting, he would remain silent and still, awaiting commands. What had Rex done that night? The report never said. Kowalski never mentioned it, and somehow, impossibly, no one at the trial ever asked. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from the warden. "If you're coming, please arrive by 2 p.m. tomorrow. Security protocols require advanced processing for animal visitors." She looked at Rex, who was now fully awake, watching her with an intensity that made her shiver. It was the same look he'd had 15 years ago in that police kennel, the look that said he knew something, that he was trying desperately to communicate something humans were too stupid to understand. "Okay, boy," Sarah whispered, kneeling beside him. "We're going to see Dad, but I need you to do something for me." Rex tilted his head, that universal dog gesture of attention. "I need you to show me the truth. Not the truth I want, not the truth that makes me feel better, the real truth about what happened that night." Tears streamed down her face now. "Can you do that? Can you help me understand?" Rex did something he rarely did anymore. He stood on his hind legs and placed his front paws on Sarah's shoulders, looking directly into her eyes. It was the stance her father had taught him years ago, the one that meant, "I understand. I'm with you. Trust me." Sarah wrapped her arms around the old dog, sobbing into his thick fur. Tomorrow she would drive 4 hours to Huntsville. Tomorrow she would bring her father's best friend to death row. Tomorrow, maybe, just maybe, she would finally learn the truth. But tonight she grieved for all of them. Her father counting down his final days, Rex, who'd waited faithfully for a partner who might never come home, and herself, a daughter torn between love and doubt, hope and despair. At 3 a.m., Sarah finally fell asleep on the couch, Rex curled protectively at her feet. In his sleep, the old dog whimpered and his paws twitched, as if he was running through a dream or perhaps a memory. A memory of that terrible night 15 years ago. A memory that held the key to everything. Sarah's alarm pierced the morning silence at 6 a.m. She'd barely slept 3 hours, but adrenaline surged through her veins the moment her eyes opened. Today was the day. Rex was already awake, sitting by the front door as if he'd known this morning would be different. His tail wagged slowly when Sarah approached, and she could swear there was understanding in those deep brown eyes. "You know where we're going, don't you, boy?" She knelt beside him, running her fingers through his graying fur. "You've been waiting for this." The drive from Houston to Huntsville typically took 90 minutes, but Sarah gave herself 4 hours. Rex needed breaks, and honestly, she needed time to prepare herself mentally for what was coming. She loaded the old dog into her Honda Civic, placing his favorite blanket on the back seat along with water and his arthritis medication. As they pulled out of her apartment complex at 7:30 a.m., Sarah's hands trembled on the steering wheel. 9 days. Her father had 9 days left to live unless something miraculous happened. The morning sun painted the Texas sky in shades of orange and pink as they merged onto Highway 45 North. Rex settled into the back seat, his head resting on the window ledge, watching the world blur past. Sarah glanced at him in the rearview mirror and felt her chest tighten. This dog had been her constant companion for 15 years. When her mother died from a stress-induced heart attack, Rex had slept beside her bed for 3 months straight. When she dropped out of college because she couldn't afford tuition while paying for her father's appeals, Rex had been there. When she'd sobbed alone in her apartment on her father's birthday, Christmas, the anniversary of his arrest, Rex had always known, pressing his warm body against hers until the grief became bearable. But what haunted her most was that Rex had never stopped waiting for Raymond to come home. Every evening at 6 p.m., the time her father used to return from his shift, Rex would go to the front door and sit, ears perked, eyes fixed on that door. After an hour, he'd sigh deeply and return to his bed with Raymond's jacket. 15 years of this ritual, never missing a single day. "I don't know if I can do this," Sarah whispered, her voice cracking. "What if seeing Dad breaks you, Rex? What if you don't understand why he can't come home with us?" Rex lifted his head and released a soft whine, as if to say, "I understand more than you think." Sarah's phone buzzed in the cup holder. A text from her boss, "Take all the time you need, praying for you and your dad." She'd worked as a paralegal for 7 years now, a bitter irony given her abandoned dreams of becoming a lawyer like her father always wanted. The criminal justice system had destroyed her family. Why would she want to be part of it? The highway stretched endlessly ahead. Sarah's mind drifted back 15 years to memories she'd buried deep. Her father's last birthday before the arrest. She'd been home from college, and they'd gone to his favorite barbecue place. Raymond had been distracted that day, troubled. When she'd asked what was wrong, he'd looked at her with such intensity. "Sarah, if anything ever happens to me, I need you to promise me something." "Dad, don't be dramatic." "Promise me," he'd insisted, gripping her hand. "If anything happens, trust Rex. Whatever anyone says, whatever evidence they show you, trust what Rex knows. He's been trained his whole life to read situations, to know the difference between right and wrong, defensive and offensive. Dogs don't lie, baby girl. They can't." At the time, she'd laughed it off as her father's typical devotion to his K-9 partner. Now those words echoed like a prophecy. 2 weeks after that conversation, Carlos Mendez was dead, and her father was in handcuffs. Sarah pulled into a rest stop near Madisonville, halfway to Huntsville. Rex needed to stretch his legs and she needed coffee, or possibly something stronger, though it was only 9 a.m. As Rex hobbled around the grassy area, moving stiffly but determinedly, Sarah noticed how other travelers smiled at him. An elderly man stopped to pet him. Beautiful dog, German Shepherd. Yes, he's a retired police dog. Ah, a hero then. The man scratched Rex behind the ears. These dogs are incredible. My son's a K-9 officer in Dallas. Those dogs are trained to remember everything, every scent, every situation, every command. They say a police dog's testimony is worth more than 10 witnesses because they can't be corrupted or confused. They just know. Sarah's blood ran cold. What do you mean, testimony? Oh, their behavior patterns. In Europe, they actually use K-9 behavior as evidence in court. The way a dog reacts to a scene, whether they're calm or agitated, protective or aggressive, it tells trained handlers exactly what happened. Some departments here are starting to document it too, though our courts don't accept it officially yet. The man waved goodbye, leaving Sarah standing frozen in the parking lot. Rex's behavior could have told them what happened that night, but Kowalski had excluded him from the investigation. Why? She pulled out her phone and Googled K-9 behavior evidence defensive shooting. Dozens of articles appeared, training manuals, academic studies, police protocols from around the world. They all said the same thing. A properly trained police dog will exhibit distinctly different behaviors depending on whether their handler is defending themselves or acting aggressively. Defensive shooting. The dog barks protectively, positions between handler and threat, shows visible agitation and protective instincts. Offensive controlled shooting. The dog remains calm, awaits commands, shows no protective behavior because no threat is perceived. Sarah's heart pounded. She clicked on a video, a training demonstration showing exactly these behaviors. The difference was unmistakable. She called the Huntsville unit. Warden Mitchell, this is Sarah Carter. I have a question about my father's case. Was Rex's behavior that night ever officially documented? Papers rustled in the background. Let me check. Here it is. According to Detective Kowalski's initial report, the K-9 was extremely agitated, barking frantically, and had to be removed from the scene for everyone's safety. He classified the dog as unreliable due to unexplained aggressive behavior. Sarah's mind exploded. Warden, that's not aggressive behavior, that's protective behavior. Rex was telling everyone my father was defending himself. Silence on the other end. Then, Ms. Carter, you should get here soon and bring any documentation you have about K-9 training protocols. Bring everything. Sarah hung up and ran back to Rex, who was waiting patiently by the car. She dropped to her knees and grabbed his face in both hands. You tried to tell them, didn't you? You showed them what really happened, but no one listened. They thought you were just a confused dog, but you were testifying. You were protecting Dad the only way you knew how. Rex licked her face, his tail wagging with sudden energy. For the first time in 15 years, someone finally understood what he'd been trying to say. Sarah loaded him back into the car, her hands no longer shaking. Now they were steady with purpose. She wasn't just bringing a dog to visit a condemned man. She was bringing a witness, the only truthful witness who'd been in that room. As they drove the final 30 miles to Huntsville, Sarah made a decision. She wouldn't let her father die with this truth buried. Even if it was too late for appeals, too late for the legal system, she would make sure the world knew what really happened. Rex stood up in the back seat, pressing his nose against the window, ears alert. Somehow, impossibly, he seemed to know they were getting close. Getting close to Raymond. Getting close to justice. Getting close to the truth that had been waiting 15 years to be heard. The Huntsville unit loomed before them like a fortress of despair. Gray concrete walls, razor wire glinting in the afternoon sun, guard towers standing sentinel against the Texas sky. Sarah had visited this place every month for 15 years, but today felt different. Today, she wasn't coming alone. Rex stood beside her in the parking lot, and for the first time since they'd arrived, the old dog trembled. Not from fear, Sarah recognized this. It was anticipation. After 15 years, Rex was about to see his partner again. Ms. Carter, a corrections officer, approached them, young, maybe 25, with kind eyes and a name tag that read M. Thompson. "I'm Officer Thompson. Warden Mitchell asked me to escort you in. Rex, is it?" Rex's ears perked at his name. "The warden set up a special visiting room. Usually we don't allow animals, but—" Thompson knelt down to Rex's level, extending his hand. "Your dad talks about you all the time, buddy. Says you're the best partner he ever had." To Sarah's surprise, Rex approached the officer and sniffed his hand carefully, then sat down, a sign of acceptance. Thompson smiled and scratched behind Rex's ears. "I've been studying K-9 protocols since your father made his request," Thompson said quietly, standing up. "I have a lot of questions about that night, Ms. Carter. A lot of things that don't add up." Sarah's pulse quickened. "You believe him?" "I'm not sure yet, but I'm starting to think your father isn't the only witness everyone ignored." He looked meaningfully at Rex. "Come on, let's not keep them waiting any longer." The walk through the prison felt eternal. Security checkpoints, metal detectors, long corridors painted institutional beige. Rex walked steadily beside Sarah, his arthritic legs moving with a determination that defied his age. With each step deeper into the facility, his breathing quickened. "He knows," Sarah thought. "He knows Raymond is close." They reached a small visiting room that had been specially prepared. Instead of the usual glass partition and phones, there was an open space with a table and chairs. 2 guards stood watch, but Warden Mitchell had given permission for limited physical contact. "He'll be brought in shortly," Thompson said. "Fair warning, Rex might react strongly. Some of the other officers are concerned about aggressive behavior." "He won't be aggressive," Sarah said firmly. "He'll be protective. There's a difference." Thompson's eyes widened slightly, as if she just confirmed something he'd been thinking. The door at the far end of the room opened with a heavy metallic clank. Raymond Carter shuffled in, shackled at the wrists and ankles, wearing an orange jumpsuit that hung loosely on his diminished frame. His gray hair was thinning, his face deeply lined, his shoulders stooped. 15 years had aged him 30. But his eyes, those sharp, intelligent eyes, were searching the room desperately. For one heartbeat, there was absolute silence. Then Rex saw him. The old dog released a sound that would haunt everyone in that room for the rest of their lives. Not a bark, not a whine, but something primal, a keening howl of pure, desperate joy mixed with heartbreak. It echoed off the concrete walls, a sound that spoke of 15 years of waiting, 15 years of loyalty, 15 years of a promise unfulfilled. Rex lunged forward with a strength that shocked everyone. Sarah held his leash but made no attempt to restrain him. The guards moved instinctively to intervene, but Thompson raised his hand, stopping them. "Let them," he commanded quietly. Raymond collapsed to his knees, and Rex crashed into him with the full force of his 60-pound body. The impact should have knocked the frail man over, but Raymond caught him, wrapped his arms around his old partner, and buried his face in the dog's thick fur. "Rex, oh God, Rex, my boy, my good boy." Raymond's voice broke into sobs, raw, wrenching sobs that shook his entire body. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I left you. I'm so sorry." Rex was everywhere at once, licking Raymond's face, pawing at his chest, whining and crying, his whole body trembling with emotion. His tail wagged so hard his entire back half swayed. He pushed his muzzle under Raymond's chin into his hands against his chest, every touch saying, "You're here. You're real. I found you." Sarah stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. She'd imagined this reunion 1,000 times, but nothing could have prepared her for the raw emotion of it. The guards were wiping their eyes. Even the hardened corrections officers, men who'd witnessed countless executions and maintained professional detachment through unimaginable human suffering, couldn't hold back their tears. Officer Thompson stood transfixed, watching Rex's behavior with intense focus. The dog wasn't just happy, he was performing specific movements. Thompson had spent the past 2 days reviewing K9 training videos, and he recognized what he was seeing. Rex was demonstrating the protective stance. The dog positioned himself between Raymond and the guards, not aggressively but protectively. His body language screamed, "My handler needs protection. My handler is in danger." "You tried to tell them, didn't you, boy?" Raymond was whispering into Rex's fur, unaware anyone could hear. "You tried to show them what really happened. You barked, you showed them the defensive position, but they wouldn't listen. They called you unreliable. They said you were just confused." Rex whined and pawed frantically at Raymond's chest. 3 sharp paws, a specific pattern. Thompson's breath caught. He knew that signal. Every K9 officer learned it in basic training. 3 paws meant threat detected, handler in danger, backup needed. Rex had been trying to tell them for 15 years that his handler was in danger. "Dad," Sarah's voice trembled as she moved closer. "Dad, we need to talk about that night, about what Rex saw." Raymond looked up at his daughter, his face wet with tears, and something shifted in his expression. "You finally believe me. I'm starting to understand that maybe Rex has been telling us the truth all along, and we were too stupid to listen." Warden Mitchell, who'd been observing from the doorway, stepped into the room. "Raymond, I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you to answer them very carefully. Officer Thompson has found some inconsistencies in your case file." Raymond's arms tightened around Rex. "What kind of inconsistencies?" "The kind that involve why your partner that night, Detective Kowalski, specifically ordered that Rex's behavior not be documented as evidence. The kind that makes me wonder what Rex saw that someone didn't want recorded." Thompson pulled out his phone, showing a training video. "Mr. Carter, can you tell me what Rex did immediately after the shooting?" Raymond's eyes closed as if the memory was painful. He went into full protection mode, barking frantically, positioning himself between me and the door where Kowalski was entering. The 3-paw alert on my chest, everything he'd been trained to do when I was in danger and needed backup. "And what does that behavior indicate?" "That I'd fired defensively, that there was still a perceived threat in the room." Raymond's voice grew stronger. "Rex was trained for 8 years. He knew the difference between me executing someone and me defending my life. He was telling everyone who'd listened that I'd acted in self-defense, that I was wounded, that I needed help." "But Kowalski reported Rex as aggressively unreliable," Thompson continued. "Because Rex knew the truth," Raymond said, looking directly at the young officer, "and the truth was inconvenient." Rex suddenly did something extraordinary. He moved away from Raymond and walked directly to Thompson. He sat down in front of the officer and raised his right paw, the K9 signal for pay attention, important. Then Rex turned to face Raymond and performed the 3-paw alert motion in the air, demonstrating the signal he'd given that night 15 years ago. The room fell silent. "He's testifying," Sarah whispered in awe. "Right now, he's showing us what he tried to tell everyone that night." Thompson knelt down in front of Rex, his mind racing. "Warden, I need to pull the complete incident report. I need to find out exactly what Kowalski wrote about Rex's behavior and why it was excluded from evidence." "Already done," Mitchell said, holding up a file. "I've been reading it while you were conducting this reunion, and gentlemen, I think we have a serious problem." Raymond clutched Rex tighter as hope, dangerous, painful hope, bloomed in his chest for the first time in 15 years. Rex looked at his partner, then at Thompson, then back to Raymond. His tail wagged once firmly as if to say, "Finally, Finally, someone is listening. Officer Marcus Thompson couldn't sleep. It was 2:47 a.m. and he sat in the prison records room surrounded by case files, cold coffee, and a growing sense of dread. What he'd witnessed in that reunion 6 hours ago had fundamentally changed something inside him. Rex had been testifying. A dog had been trying to tell the truth for 15 years, and everyone had ignored him. Thompson pulled up the original incident report on his laptop, reading it for the 5th time. Detective John Kowalski's statement jumped off the page. Upon arrival at scene, found Officer Carter standing over victim's body, weapon raised. Victim appeared to have been shot execution style. K-9 unit was present but behaving erratically, barking aggressively without clear target, unable to be calmed. Determined K-9 was unreliable witness due to unexplained agitation. Ordered animal removed from scene to preserve evidence integrity. But that wasn't what Thompson had seen today. Rex's behavior had been textbook protective response, not aggressive, not erratic, protective. Thompson opened his own training manual from the police academy. Page 89, K-9 Defensive Response Protocols. He read aloud to himself. When a K-9's handler is involved in a defensive shooting, the dog will exhibit specific protective behaviors. Positioning between handler and perceived threat, sustained alert barking, the three-paw chest signal indicating handler injury and need for backup. This behavior is highly reliable and should be documented as evidence of the handler's state of mind, an immediate threat assessment. Everything Rex had done that night was textbook defensive response. So why had Kowalski reported it as erratic aggression? Thompson's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up Kowalski's service record. 32 years with Houston PD, exemplary record, multiple commendations, retired with full pension 18 months after Raymond's conviction. 18 months seemed fast. Thompson dug deeper, accessing public financial records. His eyes widened. 2 months after Raymond's conviction, Kowalski had purchased a luxury condo in Scottsdale, Arizona, $450,000, paid in cash. 3 months later, a Mercedes S-Class, $95,000, also cash. How does a detective on a civil servant's salary come up with over $500,000 in cash? Thompson's hands trembled as he pulled up Carlos Mendez's file. The victim, known drug dealer, multiple arrests, connected to the Mendez cartel, one of Houston's largest drug trafficking organizations. But buried on page 12 of the DEA report was something that made Thompson's blood run cold. Subject Mendez, Carlos had been cooperating with federal investigators for 3 weeks prior to death, was scheduled to provide testimony regarding police corruption and cartel infiltration of Houston PD. Death occurred 2 days before scheduled federal deposition. Thompson leaned back in his chair, his mind reeling. Carlos Mendez was going to testify about corrupt cops. He died 2 days before that testimony. Raymond Carter, by all accounts an honest officer, was blamed. And John Kowalski, who suddenly had unexplained wealth, made sure the one truthful witness, Rex, was excluded from evidence. This wasn't a murder, this was a cover-up. Thompson grabbed his phone and called Sarah Carter, not caring that it was 3 a.m. "Hello," her voice was groggy, confused. "Ms. Carter, it's Officer Thompson. I'm sorry for the hour, but I need to ask you something crucial. Did your father ever mention investigating corruption within his own department?" Silence. "Then how did you know?" "Tell me everything." Sarah's voice grew clearer as she woke fully. "About 6 weeks before the shooting, Dad changed. He became paranoid, constantly looking over his shoulder. He told me he'd stumbled onto something, cops on the cartel payroll. He was building a case quietly, documenting everything, but he didn't know who he could trust." "Did he mention any names?" "No, he said the less I knew, the safer I'd be. But the week before it happened, he called me late at night. He was scared, Marcus. I'd never heard fear in my father's voice before. He said if anything happened to him, I should trust Rex. That Rex would know the truth. Thompson's mind raced. Your father was getting close to exposing someone. They needed to silence Mendez before his testimony and eliminate your father in one move. Frame the honest cop for murder, close the investigation, collect their payment. Kowalski, Sarah breathed. It was Kowalski all along. I think so, but I need proof, real proof that will hold up. Thompson paused. Ms. Carter, I need you to think carefully. Did your father keep any documentation, notes, files, anything about his corruption investigation? I have his personal effects from that night. The police returned everything except his service weapon. I've never gone through it all. I couldn't bring myself to look. Her voice cracked. There's a box in my closet. Evidence bags, his badge, his duty belt, his notebook. His notebook, Thompson said urgently. Sarah, that notebook could contain his investigation notes. Can you check right now? He heard movement, footsteps, a closet door opening. Rex barked in the background, alert despite the hour. I've got the box, theirs. Oh my God. Sarah's voice trembled. There's a notebook here. It says personal log confidential on the cover. Open it, tell me what you see. Papers rustled. Sarah gasped. It's all here. Dates, times, license plates. He was documenting meetings between officers and known cartel members. There are photographs. He must have been doing surveillance. And there's a name that appears over and over. Detective J. Kowalski, Unit 7, meets regularly with unknown Hispanic male at Pier 9 warehouse. Thompson's heart pounded. What are the dates? The surveillance started 3 months before the shooting. The last entry is 2 days before Mendez died. It says, confirmed, Kowalski is primary cartel contact within HPD. Mendez ready to testify. Meeting with FBI Friday to present evidence. Must protect Mendez until then. Can't trust anyone in department except Rex. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Raymond had been protecting Mendez, not killing him. Kowalski found out about the FBI meeting. He needed both men dead, Mendez to silence him, Raymond to frame him and close the investigation. There's more, Sarah continued, her voice shaking. The last page, written the morning of the shooting. If you're reading this and I'm not here to explain, it means they got to me. Trust Rex. He knows what happened. The dog can't lie. Three-paw alert means defensive action. Rex will tell the truth even if I can't. Thompson felt tears prick his eyes. Raymond had known he was in danger. He'd prepared for the possibility that he might be silenced. And he'd trusted that someday someone would listen to his dog. Sarah, I need that notebook. I need those photographs. We have 8 days to prove your father's innocence. I'm getting in my car right now. Thompson hung up and immediately dialed Warden Mitchell's personal number. This better be life or death, Thompson, the warden growled. It is, sir. Raymond Carter is innocent. I can prove it. But we need to move fast, and we need to find Detective John Kowalski before he realizes we're onto him. Silence on the other end. Then, my office, 1 hour, bring everything. Thompson gathered his files, his hands shaking with adrenaline. He thought of Raymond, sleeping in his cell, 8 days from execution. He thought of Rex, who tried for 15 years to tell anyone who'd listen that his handler was innocent. His phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. On my way. Marcus, promise me something. Promise me you won't let my father die for a crime he didn't commit. Thompson typed back, I promise. Rex's testimony will be heard, even if I have to take this to the governor myself. He looked at the clock, 4:15 a.m., 8 days, 192 hours. It wasn't much time to dismantle 15 years of lies. But Marcus Thompson had seen the truth in an old dog's eyes, and he'd read the desperate hope in a dying man's words. He wouldn't stop until justice was served. He pulled up John Kowalski's last known address in Scottsdale, Arizona. a luxury retirement community for someone who should have been living on a modest pension. Thompson allowed himself a grim smile. Kowalski had made one critical mistake 15 years ago. He'd underestimated a dog's loyalty and a good officer's preparation. That mistake was about to cost him everything. Sarah burst through Warden Mitchell's office door at 5:30 a.m., clutching a weathered evidence box to her chest. Her eyes were wild with exhaustion and desperate hope. Officer Thompson stood beside the warden's desk, surrounded by printouts and file folders. "Show me," Thompson said immediately. Sarah's hands shook as she opened the box and pulled out her father's leather-bound notebook. The cover was worn, the pages yellowed, but Raymond's handwriting was clear and methodical, the careful documentation of a good cop building an airtight case. Warden Mitchell put on his reading glasses and took the notebook. As he flipped through the pages, his expression darkened. Dear God, he documented everything. Dates, times, locations, photographs of meetings between Kowalski and known cartel members. Here, Sarah pointed to a page marked with a paper clip. 3 days before the shooting, Dad wrote, "Kowalski knows I'm investigating him. Caught him watching my house. Need to move fast. Mendez's testimony is our only chance to expose the whole network. Meeting FBI Friday." Thompson cross-referenced the date with the incident report. Mendez was killed Thursday night, 1 day before the FBI meeting. "That's not a coincidence," Mitchell said grimly. Kowalski needed both of them gone. Kill the witness, frame the investigator, collect his payoff, and retire rich. Sarah pulled out a manila envelope from the box. Inside were photographs, grainy surveillance shots taken with a telephoto lens. They showed Detective Kowalski shaking hands with a heavy-set Hispanic man outside a warehouse, money exchanging hands, Kowalski accepting a thick envelope. "Dad risked everything to get these photos," Sarah whispered, "and we let him rot in prison for 15 years. "No," Thompson said firmly. "Kowalski did this. He manipulated the system, he manipulated the evidence, and he made sure the only witness who couldn't be corrupted, Rex, was silenced." He looked at Mitchell. "Sir, we need to contact Kowalski. We need a confession." Mitchell leaned back in his chair. "John Kowalski is in Arizona, living off his ill-gotten wealth. What makes you think he'll talk to us?" "Because he doesn't know we know," Thompson said. "He thinks he got away with it. 15 years of freedom makes people careless, and if he knows Raymond is about to be executed, he might feel safe enough to slip." Sarah's phone buzzed, an unknown number. She answered cautiously. "Hello." "Ms. Carter, my name is Emma Rodriguez. I'm an investigative journalist with the Houston Chronicle. I've been researching wrongful conviction cases, and your father's name keeps appearing in my notes. I'd like to talk to you about Detective John Kowalski." Sarah's eyes widened. She put the call on speaker. "What do you know about Kowalski?" "I've been investigating police corruption in Houston for 2 years. Kowalski's name has come up multiple times in connection with the Mendez cartel. Officers who served with him have hinted at suspicious behavior, but no one would go on record. They were too scared. When I heard about your father's execution date, something didn't sit right. A decorated K-9 officer with a spotless record suddenly committing execution-style murder. It felt wrong." Thompson leaned toward the phone. "Ms. Rodriguez, this is Officer Marcus Thompson with the Huntsville unit. What else have you found?" "Financial irregularities. Kowalski's retirement fund shows several large cash deposits that don't match his salary. His property purchases in Arizona were all cash transactions. And here's the interesting part. 3 other officers who worked closely with Kowalski have also retired early with suspicious wealth. I think there was an entire network." "Can you prove it?" Mitchell demanded. "Not yet, but if I had access to Raymond Carter's investigation files, I might be able to connect the dots. I've heard rumors he was building a corruption case before his arrest." Sarah looked at Thompson, who nodded. Ms. Rodriguez, how fast can you get to Huntsville? I'm already in my car. I'll be there in 90 minutes. After hanging up, Mitchell stood and paced his office. Even with all this evidence, we're fighting 15 years of legal precedent. The appeals process is exhausted. The governor would need overwhelming proof to grant a stay of execution. Then we get overwhelming proof, Thompson said. We go to Kowalski, we confront him with what we know, we get it on record. He'll never confess, Sarah said bitterly. Maybe not to us. Thompson pulled up Kowalski's social media profile. The detective's Facebook page showed him living large in Arizona, golf courses, expensive restaurants, vacation photos. But he might confess if he thinks his whole world is about to collapse. Emma can help with that. Emma Rodriguez arrived at 7:15 a.m., a whirlwind of energy with a messenger bag full of files and recording equipment. At 29, she'd already won 2 awards for investigative journalism exposing corruption. Show me everything, she demanded. For the next 3 hours they built their case. Raymond's notebook, the surveillance photos, Thompson's financial research, Emma's network of whistleblowers. It was damning, comprehensive, and infuriating. This should never have gone to trial, Emma said, shaking her head. The K-9 evidence alone should have raised reasonable doubt. Why was Rex's behavior excluded? Because Kowalski knew Rex was telling the truth, Sarah said. Rex's protective response proved Dad was defending himself. Kowalski couldn't allow that testimony. Thompson's phone rang, an Arizona number. He answered, his heart racing. Officer Thompson, this is Detective Mike Reeves, Scottsdale PD. You left me a message about John Kowalski. Yes, sir. We're investigating a potential wrongful conviction case. Kowalski was a key witness. We need to interview him. That's going to be difficult. Reeves paused. Kowalski was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer 3 weeks ago. He's in hospice care. Doctors say he has maybe 2 months left. Thompson's mind raced. A dying man with nothing to lose. Detective Reeves, this is urgent. A man is scheduled for execution in 8 days for a murder we believe Kowalski framed him for. We need to speak with him immediately. Silence, then, I'll arrange it. But Thompson, Kowalski's been asking to speak with a priest. Says he has things he needs to confess before he dies. Maybe your timing is better than you think. Emma grabbed her camera equipment. I'm coming with you. If he confesses, I want it documented. Sarah stood. I'm coming too. I want to look that man in the eyes and hear him admit what he did to my family. Mitchell made a decision. Go, all of you. I'll notify the governor's office that new evidence is emerging, and I'll tell Raymond. He deserves to know there's hope. 4 hours later, Thompson, Sarah, and Emma boarded a flight to Phoenix. Sarah clutched her father's notebook like a lifeline. Thompson reviewed his questions. Emma checked her recording equipment. What if he denies everything? Sarah asked quietly. Then we use the evidence we have and pray it's enough, Thompson replied. But dying men often want to clear their consciences. Kowalski has carried this secret for 15 years. The weight of it must be crushing. They landed in Phoenix at 2 p.m. Detective Reeves met them at the airport, his expression grim. I called the hospice. Kowalski is willing to see you, but his lawyer is present. This could get complicated. We're running out of time, Sarah said firmly. My father has 7 days left to live. Complicated is a luxury we don't have. The hospice facility was peaceful, serene. Everything a death row cell wasn't. They found Kowalski in room 247, a shell of the powerful detective from the trial photos. Cancer had ravaged him, leaving behind a skeletal man hooked to oxygen, his skin gray and papery. But his eyes, those eyes still held sharp intelligence, and when he saw Sarah, something flickered in them. Guilt, fear, regret. You look like your father, Kowalski rasped. Same eyes, same stubborn chin. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. You destroyed my family. I know. The simple admission hung in the air like a bomb. Thompson moved forward, his recorder running. Detective Kowalski, I'm Officer Marcus Thompson from Huntsville Unit. We're here about the Carlos Mendez shooting 15 years ago. I know why you're here, Kowalski interrupted. He looked at his lawyer, an expensive suit who seemed uncomfortable. Jim, leave us. John, I advise. I'm dying, Jim. Legal advice is irrelevant now. Get out. The lawyer reluctantly left. Kowalski turned his attention back to Thompson, Sarah, and Emma. You want to know the truth about that night? His voice was barely a whisper. I'll tell you, not because I want forgiveness, I don't deserve it, but because Raymond Carter is a better man than I ever was, and he shouldn't die for my sins. Sarah's breath caught. Emma's camera was rolling. Thompson leaned forward, hardly daring to breathe. Tell us everything, Thompson said, from the beginning. And John Kowalski, with 7 weeks left to live, began to speak. John Kowalski's hand trembled as he reached for his oxygen mask, taking a deep breath before speaking. The late afternoon sun filtered through the hospice room window, casting long shadows across his dying face. Emma's camera captured every moment. I was on the cartel payroll for 8 years before that night, Kowalski began, his voice barely above a whisper. Started small, looking the other way during traffic stops, delaying warrant executions. But it grew. The money was too good, and I told myself I was just surviving, supporting my family. Sarah's nails dug into her palms. Every fiber of her being wanted to scream at this man, but she forced herself to stay silent. They needed his full confession. Carlos Mendez was different from the other dealers. He had a conscience, a daughter he was trying to protect. When the DEA picked him up, he broke fast, started telling them everything about the cartel's operations in Houston, the distribution networks, the money laundering, the corrupt cops. Kowalski coughed violently, blood speckling the tissue he pressed to his lips. He gave them 6 names. Mine was first on the list. The cartel found out through their lawyer. They gave me an ultimatum: eliminate Mendez before his federal testimony or they'd eliminate my family. My wife, my 2 daughters. They showed me photos of my kids leaving school. They weren't bluffing. Thompson's jaw clenched. So you decided to kill Mendez and frame your partner. It wasn't supposed to be Raymond, Kowalski's voice cracked. I was supposed to handle the raid alone, but dispatch sent Raymond as backup, standard protocol for high-risk warrants. When we entered that warehouse, I had maybe 30 seconds to make a decision that would haunt me for the rest of my miserable life. Sarah leaned forward. What happened in that room? Kowalski's eyes closed and tears leaked from the corners. Mendez was there alone, exactly where the cartel said he'd be. He saw us and immediately put his hands up. He was surrendering, begging for witness protection. Raymond was calling it in, requesting transport for a cooperative suspect. Then I saw my chance. I fired at Mendez, but my angle was wrong. I only wounded him. He went down, and in the chaos, he grabbed Raymond's backup piece from his belt holster. Self-defense instinct. Mendez fired wild, catching Raymond in the shoulder. Thompson's eyes widened. So Raymond did shoot in self-defense. Yes, Kowalski whispered. Raymond returned fire, 2 shots, center mass, textbook defensive response. Mendez was dead before he hit the ground. Rex immediately went into protection mode, barking frantically, doing that 3-paw alert on Raymond's chest. The dog knew his handler had been wounded defending himself. Emma's hands shook as she held the camera. But you reported it as an execution. I had seconds to decide. Raymond was injured, disoriented, calling for an ambulance. Rex was going crazy, trying to protect his partner. I saw my opportunity. Kowalski's voice turned bitter with self-loathing. I moved Mendez's body, adjusted the blood spatter, repositioned Raymond's service weapon to make it look like an execution shot. Then I called it in: officer-involved shooting, possible homicide. Sarah's voice was ice. You framed an innocent man, your partner, someone who trusted you. "I know," Kowalski's shout dissolved into coughing. When he recovered, his voice was broken. "I know what I am." Raymond kept saying Mendez shot first, kept insisting it was self-defense. And Rex, that damn dog, was testifying better than any human witness. His behavior was textbook defensive response protocol. "So you had Rex excluded from the investigation," Thompson said. "I told the responding officers the dog was unreliable, acting aggressively for no reason. I wrote it up as erratic behavior and ordered him removed from the scene before anyone could document his actual response. I knew if any K9 expert examined Rex's behavior, they'd immediately see it proved Raymond's self-defense claim." Emma spoke for the first time. "The notebook. Raymond was investigating you." Kowalski nodded weakly. "He'd been tracking me for 3 months. He knew someone in the department was dirty, and he was closing in. When he showed up at that raid, I realized he might have already figured it out. Framing him for murder solved 2 problems, eliminated the investigation, and gave me a scapegoat for Mendez's death." "How much did they pay you?" Sarah's voice shook with rage. $200,000, deposited in 3 separate cash payments to make it look less suspicious. Kowalski laughed bitterly, which triggered another coughing fit. "I bought my Arizona condo, my Mercedes, my comfortable retirement. And every single day for 15 years, I've seen Raymond's face when they took him away in handcuffs. Every single night, I've heard that dog barking, trying to tell everyone the truth." Thompson pulled out his phone, showing Kowalski a photo from that morning. Raymond and Rex reunited in the prison visiting room. "This is what you did. Raymond has 7 days until execution. Rex waited 15 years to see his partner again." Kowalski stared at the photo, tears streaming freely now. "I'm a coward and a murderer. I let a good man rot in prison for my crime. I destroyed his family, his career, his life, all to save my own skin and make some blood money." "We need you to make an official statement," Emma said, her camera still recording. "On record, video testimony that can be submitted to the governor's office." "I'll do more than that," Kowalski said. He reached for his phone on the bedside table with trembling hands. "I kept everything. Insurance policy in case the cartel ever turned on me. Bank records showing the payments. Communications with my cartel contact. Photos of the money drops. Text messages proving I knew Mendez was going to testify and I was ordered to eliminate him." Sarah's breath caught. "You have proof?" "Everything. It's in a safe deposit box in Houston, First National Bank, box 2847. The key is in my wallet." Kowalski pointed to his personal belongings on the chair. "My lawyer has authorization papers. You can access it immediately." Thompson was already dialing. "Detective Reeves, we need immediate access to a safe deposit box. Get a warrant ready." Emma continued recording as Kowalski spoke directly to the camera. "My name is John Kowalski, retired detective with Houston Police Department. I am of sound mind, giving this testimony freely, with no coercion. On the night of September 15 years ago, I murdered Carlos Mendez to prevent his testimony about police corruption. I then framed my partner, Officer Raymond Carter, for that murder." His voice grew stronger, as if confession was lifting a weight from his dying body. "Raymond Carter is innocent. He acted in self-defense when Mendez fired at him. His K9 partner, Rex, exhibited textbook protective behavior that would have proven Raymond's innocence, but I deliberately excluded that evidence and falsified my report. I have documented proof of my cartel payments, communications proving premeditation, and evidence showing I manipulated the crime scene. Raymond Carter should never have been convicted. I am the murderer. I am the corrupt cop. I am the one who deserves to be punished." Kowalski looked directly into the camera, his eyes hollow. "I'm dying anyway. Cancer is taking me in weeks, but I won't let an innocent man die for my sins. Governor of Texas, I am confessing to murder and conspiracy. Raymond Carter must be released immediately. This is my dying declaration, and God help me, it's the first honest thing I've said in 15 years. The room fell silent, except for the hiss of Kowalski's oxygen tank. Sarah stood, walked to his bedside, and looked down at the broken man who destroyed her family. I hope you find whatever peace you're looking for, Detective Kowalski, but you should know, my father is twice the man you ever were. He survived 15 years in hell with his integrity intact. Can you say the same? Without waiting for an answer, she turned and walked out. Thompson stopped the recording and immediately called Warden Mitchell. Sir, we have it. Full confession on video with documented evidence. Get the governor on the phone. We're bringing Raymond Carter home. Emma was already uploading the video to secure servers, preparing her story. This would be the biggest exposé of her career, but more importantly, it would free an innocent man. As they left the hospice, Sarah looked up at the Arizona sky. 7 days. They had 7 days to get this evidence processed, submitted, and approved. 7 days to save her father's life. But now, finally, they had the truth. Emma Rodriguez's article hit the Houston Chronicle's website at 9 p.m. that same evening. By 9:15 p.m., it had gone viral. By 10 p.m., every major news network in America was covering the story. By midnight, #Free Raymond Carter was trending worldwide. The headline read, Dying Detective Confesses, Innocent Cop Spent 15 Years on Death Row While Real Killer Walked Free. The video of Kowalski's confession played on repeat across every channel. His gaunt face, his broken voice admitting to murder and conspiracy, his detailed explanation of how he'd framed his own partner, it was impossible to ignore. Sarah sat in a hotel room in Phoenix, phone pressed to her ear as Warden Mitchell updated her. The governor's office has been flooded with calls, over 10,000 in the last 2 hours. They're reviewing the evidence now. How long will that take? Sarah's voice trembled. We have 6 days. The legal team is working through the night. The confession is solid, and the evidence from Kowalski's safe deposit box corroborates everything. Bank statements showing the cartel payments, communications proving premeditation, even photographs Kowalski took as insurance. Sarah, this is as airtight as evidence gets. Thompson stood by the window, watching news vans pull up to the hotel. The public pressure alone might force a quick decision. This story has captured the nation's attention. I don't care about the nation, Sarah said fiercely. I care about my father. I care about getting him home before, her voice broke. Before he dies of a broken heart, she didn't say. Before 15 years of injustice kills him anyway. Her phone buzzed, an unknown number. She answered cautiously. Ms. Carter, this is Governor Patricia Lawson's office. The governor would like to speak with you. Sarah's heart stopped. Thompson and Emma crowded close, listening. A woman's authoritative voice came on the line. Ms. Carter, I've spent the last 3 hours reviewing your father's case. I've watched Detective Kowalski's confession 4 times. I've examined the evidence from his safe deposit box. I've consulted with the Attorney General, the state's attorney, and my legal advisors. Sarah couldn't breathe. I am issuing an emergency stay of execution, effective immediately. Furthermore, I am ordering Raymond Carter's conviction overturned and his immediate release from custody. Ms. Carter, your father is a free man. Sarah collapsed to her knees, phone clattering to the floor. Sobs racked her body, 15 years of grief, rage, and desperate hope finally breaking free. Thompson picked up the phone, thanking the governor while Emma captured Sarah's raw emotion on camera. There's more, the governor continued. I'm ordering a full investigation into the Houston Police Department's handling of this case. Everyone who ignored evidence, everyone who failed to properly document K-9 testimony, everyone who participated in this miscarriage of justice will be held accountable. At 6 a.m. the next morning, Sarah's plane touched down in Houston. She drove directly to Huntsville, speeding the entire way. Rex sat in the back seat, somehow sensing that something monumental was happening. The old dog's tail hadn't stopped wagging since they'd left the house. Warden Mitchell met them in the parking lot, his stern face cracked with an actual smile. He's being processed out now. Should be about 30 minutes. Sarah couldn't wait inside. She stood outside the prison gates, Rex beside her, watching the sun rise over the concrete walls that had held her father captive for 5,479 days. Television crews had already arrived. Emma Rodriguez stood among them, camera ready. This wasn't just Sarah's story anymore, it was America's story. A story of loyalty, injustice, and the unbreakable bond between a man and his dog. At 7:23 a.m., the steel doors opened. Raymond Carter stepped into the sunlight a free man. He looked smaller somehow, more fragile than Sarah remembered from their visit days ago. The orange jumpsuit had been replaced with civilian clothes, jeans, and a Houston PD t-shirt someone had brought him. His gray hair caught the morning light. His hands, no longer shackled, hung uncertainly at his sides as if he didn't quite believe this was real. Then he saw Rex. The old German shepherd's ears shot forward. For one suspended moment, man and dog simply stared at each other across the parking lot. 15 years of separation. 15 years of waiting. 15 years of faith that this moment would come. Rex moved first. Despite his 13 years, despite his arthritis, despite everything age had taken from him, Rex ran. Not the slow, painful walk of an old dog, but a full, joyous sprint. The same run he'd used 15 years ago when Raymond came home from shift every evening. Raymond fell to his knees, arms open, and Rex crashed into him with the full force of unconditional love. They went down together in a tangle of man and dog, both of them making sounds that weren't quite human, weren't quite animal, just pure, primal joy. "Good boy," Raymond sobbed into Rex's fur. "Such a good boy, you did it. You saved me, you never gave up." Rex was everywhere at once, licking Raymond's face, pawing his chest in that familiar three-paw signal, whining and crying and wagging so hard his entire body shook. He was saying everything he'd waited 15 years to say. "I knew. I always knew. I tried to tell them. Welcome home." Sarah stood frozen, tears streaming down her face as she watched her father and his faithful partner reunite. Around them, hardened corrections officers wept openly. News cameras captured every moment. Even Warden Mitchell wiped his eyes. Officer Marcus Thompson stood beside Sarah. "He's going to be okay," he said quietly. "Your father, he survived because he had something to live for." "He had Rex," Sarah whispered, "and Rex had him." Raymond finally looked up and saw his daughter. With Rex still pressed against his side, he stood and opened his arms. Sarah ran to him, and they held each other for the first time as truly free people. "I'm sorry," Raymond kept saying. "I'm so sorry for all the years I missed." "You're here now," Sarah said fiercely. "That's all that matters. You're here and you're free and we're together." The three of them, father, daughter, and the faithful dog who never stopped believing, stood in that parking lot as cameras flashed and the world watched. Justice, so long delayed, had finally arrived. 1 year later. Raymond Carter sat on his porch in a small house outside Houston, Rex lying at his feet. The old dog's muzzle was completely white now, his movements slow and deliberate, but his eyes still held that sharp intelligence, and his tail still wagged when Raymond spoke to him. They'd spent the past year traveling Texas, speaking at law schools and advocacy groups about wrongful convictions. Raymond had become a powerful voice for criminal justice reform, and Rex, now 14, still accompanied him to every appearance, the living symbol of loyalty and truth. "Time for bed, old friend," Raymond said softly one evening in late autumn. Rex struggled to his feet, and Raymond helped him to his bed, the same bed where he'd slept with Raymond's police jacket for 15 years. But now Raymond was here, and Rex could finally rest. That night, as Raymond slept in his own bed for the first time in 16 years, Rex took his last breath. Peaceful, content, his duty finally complete. When Raymond found him in the morning, he knelt beside his partner one final time. "Thank you," he whispered, his hand resting on Rex's still chest. "Thank you for never giving up on me. Thank you for telling the truth when no one would listen. Rest now, boy. You've earned it." They buried Rex with full honors, a police K-9 funeral with flag and ceremony. Officers from across Texas attended. On Rex's headstone, Raymond had inscribed, "Rex, faithful partner, truthful witness, best friend, you saved my life." Raymond continued his advocacy work, and in Rex's memory, he helped establish the K-9 Truth Project, an organization dedicated to ensuring that police dog testimony and behavior analysis were properly documented and considered as evidence. 3 more wrongfully convicted people were freed because of Raymond's work. 17 cases were reopened. The Houston Police Department underwent massive reforms. And every evening at 6 p.m., Raymond still looked at Rex's empty bed and felt that familiar presence, the ghost of a faithful dog who'd waited 15 years to bring his partner home. Some bonds, Raymond learned, transcend even death. Rex was gone, but the truth he'd fought so hard to tell lived on. Justice had been served, not by the legal system, but by the unwavering loyalty of a dog who knew his partner's heart better than any human ever could. The end.